It is the basketball show for the basketball fan. Welcome back to another edition of Open Gym right here on 1010XL. RJ Saunders here with you, John O'Leary, behind the scenes, making it all happen for us once again. Have a great show lined up for you today. Going to continue doing a couple of deep dives here before the NBA season commences. What are some teams looking towards this season, whether that be the NBA playoffs, an NBA championship, or even fighting for that number one pick in the NBA draft. Today we'll look at the Portland Trailblazers and the Los Angeles Clippers, double dipping today right here on Open Gym. Excited to talk to a couple of analysts from both of those teams about those squads and the organization. But before we get to those guys, Hoops Hype has now come out with their top 25 players list. And it's kind of an interesting one. Just going to really go through the top 10 and just want to talk about which one out of those top 10 may be under the most pressure here this coming NBA season. At number one, they do have Nikola Jokic. And I don't think they're saying in terms of the best player. Maybe they are, but I don't view Nikola Jokic, who is the reigning MVP this season, as your best player in the NBA. I would give that to the number two man that they have in Luka Doncic. He did go to the NBA Finals, did finish as a runner-up, but this is a guy that looks like one of the most complete wing players that we have had in the NBA in quite some time. Not the flashiest, not the most stargazing in anybody's opinion or in anybody's aspect for that matter, but he has been able to get the job done for the Dallas Mavericks. And with Dallas now getting some talent around him, you could look at this team as one that's going to finish in the top three in the Western Conference. You could also look at this squad and say that they could go back to the NBA Finals, if not the Western Conference Finals. It's going to definitely be interesting to see. Kind of rounding it out, they do have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 3, Giannis at 4, Joel Embiid at 5, Jason Tatum at 6, Anthony Edwards at 7, Jalen Brunson at 8, Anthony Davis at 9, and Victor Wembanyama rounding it out at number 10. The person that I feel has the most pressure coming into this season is going to be Joel Embiid. I really feel like this is a big year for Joel. Don't you think? I mean, this is a guy who, before the injury happened late last year, you could probably argue he was going to be the MVP. Heck, you could even argue that the Philadelphia 76ers may have been the favorites to come out of the Eastern Conference had he stayed healthy, both he and Tyrese Maxey. Definitely starting to figure it out, aren't they? And now they have added Paul George, and this has been an interesting tenure for Joel Embiid as he has been healthy and trusting the process and being in Philadelphia. Really hasn't been able to get over the hump, and I understand that a lot of that has been on him, but there have been a few things that have worked against him. You've had the whole Ben Simmons saga. You really thought that James Harden would have stayed, and he found a home in Philly. He elects to go. The Doc Rivers experiment doesn't work out there in Philadelphia. Now you have a young guy in Tyrese Maxey, and you have one of the better wing players in the NBA and wing scorers in Paul George. I think that is a trio that is going to be a force within the East. Now, whether or not it's going to work remains to be seen, but on paper, you would think that this is going to be one of the top 5 teams within the East. I could argue that this team could be top 3 within the Eastern Conference. Joel Embiid is going to have to deliver. I think this is all going to fall on his shoulders. If everyone is to stay healthy, and I understand that he, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey have had their fair share of injury problems, but if everyone stays healthy, I think this is the best team that you can put in front of the Boston Celtics, and they can stop them in terms of repeating. I understand that guys are in love with the New York Knicks. I'm in love with the Orlando Magic. I think they're still a couple of years away before they're able to dethrone a team such as the Boston Celtics. Philly is here to win, and they're here to win now. When you look at other guys in that top 10 that I named off, I don't know if we're putting pressure on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander yet. I understand that he was a guy that was also in the talks for the NBA's most valuable player last season. OKC finished number 1 in the Western Conference. I don't think he is that guy yet that we're saying he needs to win a championship. Luka Doncic is. Nikola Jokic being your number 1 player, it really does feel that this is going to be an interesting thing in terms of you have lost 3 of your best wing defenders. You had Jeff Green once upon a time. You also had Bruce Brown, and you've lost KCP to the Orlando Magic. What are the Denver Nuggets going to do wing-wise when it comes to their defense? Is this going to be a team that most guys are scared of now within a West that's getting deeper and getting more loaded and better with each summer that passes? I don't know if the Denver Nuggets are going to be as scary as they once were when they were one of those teams that each and every year, once they finally figured it out, that you said this is going to be a team that's going to be in the finals each and every year. Luka, are we putting pressure on him? Sure. He finally has the pieces around him. You saw what happened when he did have those pieces around him. Made the NBA Finals. He and Kyrie Irving, a dynamic duo for the ages. Now you add Klay Thompson to that, but there's so many questions on Klay to where if this doesn't work out, are we blaming the organization? Or are we blaming Luka? And are we still saying that whether or not Klay Thompson puts out a performance such as the old days and he turns back the clock and he's Golden State Klay in Dallas, is that now on Luka's shoulders to now not have to do as much? Maybe he can do a little bit more offensively where he's able to conserve more of his energy, maybe be more of a guy that's looking to be pass first than score first. Remaining to be seen. Joel Embiid is a guy who's been looked at as one of the more dominant centers in the NBA in quite some time. Doesn't have a ring to supplement all of his accomplishments, in which he has. Anthony Davis is also an interesting one to me because it does seem like here's a guy who played over 70 games this past season. Defensively, he was an absolute monster. You could argue that he could have won Defensive Player of the Year, but this Los Angeles Lakers team, they're going to have to make moves at some point during the regular season if they have any shot of just getting to the playoffs and not having to win in the play-in to get there. Joel Embiid, I really feel like we are running out of excuses for this guy. You have the team now. I think you have not just one, but two guys in which can get their own baskets, going to be heavily respected by other NBA teams and organizations and opponents when you go head up against other squads within the East and the West this season. That's going to give Joel Embiid and should give Joel Embiid all the confidence in the world to just be able to go out there and dominate. If he doesn't, is the process over? Is this going to be a guy that is going to probably leave the Philadelphia 76ers and look to go elsewhere? Where? I don't know. I'm not saying that he's going to leave Philly, but do the questions start to loom? We have given Joel Embiid everything that we could possibly give him, and you can make every little, footnote and asterisk by every single year he has been in the league. I think it's time to win now for him. Another interesting one for me is actually Giannis. If there's stock that you want to buy and if there's stock that you want to sell, I'm kind of a seller right now in Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks because the Bucks are an older team now. They are a team in which we don't know if Damian Lillard wants to stay there long term. This is a team that I really feel misses a guy like Drew Holiday. Chris Middleton's getting older. Injuries are really starting to settle in for him where he's not able to play a full season. Giannis going 1-on-5 every time. I think a lot of teams have started to figure it out. He's won one ring. I don't know if we are putting him in position where we're saying he needs to win multiple rings in order to be considered a great player. I'm not saying that his career is etched in stone, but we understand what he was able to do for a Milwaukee team and a city like Milwaukee is something that is never going to be repeated in that city in quite some time. That's how much he is respected as a Milwaukee Buck. It's Joel Embiid's time now. Joel Embiid doesn't solely need to win MVP, but he solely needs to be the reason why the Philadelphia 76ers go to an NBA Finals and win an NBA Finals. This is his time. This can be his NBA if you want to be honest. It's going to be interesting to see what the former MVP does this NBA season. My thoughts, would love to hear yours in the comment section. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and also subscribe to the podcast because we have a lot going here on Open Gym, a lot more to come, and we're definitely excited. We are less than 25 days away from tip-off and a new NBA season. But when we come back, we will look into the Blazers and what they are doing. It's been a year since Damian Lillard has left. It's now the Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons, and Scoot Henderson show. What is Chauncey Billups looking to do this season with that squad? Is this squad going to look to contend for a play-in spot, or is this a team just looking to continue to build through the draft? And are there any moves that are going to be made by this team this season? You heard Jeremy Grant's name being thrown out there here and there a little bit during the NBA offseason. The Blazers have yet to give him up. Who's going to be the best suitor to take a guy like Jeremy Grant? And even the Time Lord, Robert Williams. Aaron Fentress is going to join us next to talk all things Blazers. It's the basketball show for the basketball fan back here on the Open Gym, 1010XL and 92.5 FM. And I'm grateful to have our next guest as we continue to do our deep dives throughout the NBA and just texting this guy back and forth. He is one of the most hilarious guys that I have come across that talks about the NBA. He is Aaron Fentress. You can follow him on X at Aaron J. Fentress. That's going to be Aaron JFentress. He does a great podcast as well, talking about the Blazers. It's called the Blazer Focus Podcast. Make sure to follow that show if you are a Portland Trailblazers fan or just an NBA fan that wants to know more about the Blazers and what they are going to do this season. So, Aaron, thank you for joining my little show, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I don't like to get up early, but I'm actually up early anyway because of my kids going to school and my dog. My dog's all up in my grill every morning, so I just... so I'm good. I'm all good.
Man, thank you definitely for coming on and waking up early. But promised that we wouldn't do a deep dive on the schedule here, but did want to ask this. What would be considered a strong year for the Portland Trailblazers in your opinion?
Cooper Flagg. I'm 100% serious.
Cooper Flagg. So it's just they should be looking to just get the number one pick.
The Portland Trailblazers have no interest in doing anything other than being in position to get Cooper Flagg.
Wow. I mean, I know that they're not going to come out and they're going to, make that known throughout the NBA, but is there the rumblings there of just, listen, this is the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes, we want to get that number one pick?
Well, they ended the prior two seasons tanking. It wasn't the goal going in,
right,
but they ended up tanking those two seasons. Last year, they knew going in they were going to struggle, and then they did things to orchestrate those struggles when it counted late in the season. And they ended up with tied for the third worst record, but ended up with the seventh pick, which they were not happy about. Okay. And that was in what was considered a very weak draft, right?
Right.
So now, in the next draft, 2025, is being viewed as one of the deepest ever.
Right.
So they absolutely want into that draft. And, of course, at the top of it's Cooper Flagg, who, he's not Wemby, but he's considered, a can't-miss star that everyone covets. And so, it's one of these things with the NBA where the last thing you want to be is sort of stuck in the middle, and they know they don't have a high talent level. They're building through young players, mainly Scoot and Sharpe. So even if they were somehow, everyone were to elevate this year and they would contend for the play-in, at the end of the day, what does that get you?
Right.
It gets you smacked in the play-in
right,
or in the first round. And so it's much more beneficial to the franchise if you get back into that lottery and add more talent. So they really, they made the trade for Denny, but other than that, they've done nothing at all to try and address some of the issues with the roster, which the defense is weak, the shooting is weak, right there. So yes, they're I see fans sometimes on Twitter or Instagram talking about, man, I think we can surprise people this year, and I just have to break their heart by saying, yeah, don't plan on it, because they know there's no benefit in overachieving, but there could be huge benefit in making sure that you're right there high in the lottery again.
Absolutely. And talking about a guy like Cooper Flagg and trying to add him to the young talent, let's talk about last year's first round pick in which the Portland Trailblazers acquired and Scoot Henderson. Kind of how would you assess his first year and what are you expecting to see out of him coming year two?
Well, he struggled. I mean, there's no doubt about that. He struggled. And it was interesting because there were such high expectations for him as a rookie, but he didn't play all that well in the G League. He shot like 42%. 9 of his 19 games, he shot under 40%. A lot of turnovers. Can't really shoot the three very well. So the idea that he was going to waltz into the NBA at 19 and all of a sudden fix all of those things never made any sense to me. And, of course, he did not. Now, he did show improvement late in the season, no doubt about that.
Right.
But he's so young. Like I say, he's 19, 20. And when when people call someone generational and transcendent, the fans start expecting that person to be generational and transcendent on day one.
Right.
That did not happen. But the talent is there. If he can fix the shooting, which I know he's working his tail off on trying to do that, then he's definitely going to at the very least be good. Is he going to be transcendent and generational? I don't know. Transcendent means godlike. So
right.
I don't know if I buy that label.
Right.
But he definitely. Let's put it this way: he's not going to be a bust. But if you're expecting a championship caliber #1 perennial All-Star, All-Pro career out of him, I think I'm not buying that happening yet. But if he's just at least very good, I think that works out well for them long term, as long as they can build around him.
Aaron Fentress, you can follow him on X at Aaron J. Fentress. Joining us now to talk about the Portland Trailblazers as they come into the 2024-2025 season. You're another draft pick that just came this year in the 7th overall pick, Donovan Clingan, who was out of UConn and led them to another NCAA championship. Seems like he's going to be utilized heavily come this season for the Portland Trailblazers. What are you going to want to see out of the young man out of UConn?
Well, I want to see evidence of the offensive abilities they claim he has, but were somewhat suppressed by playing in UConn's system where they didn't ask him to be an offensive force. They claim he can shoot. They claim he can do all the things. That's what I want to see. I mean, now if he's just a defensive-minded center who rebounds well, that's fine. Again, as long as you have the right pieces around him. But, if he can develop an offensive game, if he can be a threat outside of 2 feet, right? Then you have, an impact, a two-way impact starting center, which would be huge for, their rebuild, because I don't believe, many people don't believe, that they believe 100% in Ayton anymore. And Aiden has a lot of pressure on him this season, man. Like he crushed it the last month and a half of last season.
He did.
But there was zero pressure, zero level. They were tanking. It didn't matter. They were losing. And he went out there and he played, like dominating.
Right.
I asked him specifically, are we going to see that at the beginning of next year? And he said yes. So let's see. If he comes out and he's, 24-12 and killing it, then, maybe they consider a situation where, okay, we're going to extend him. He only has 2 years left on his – only 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years is a long time in the NBA these days. But, then you got him and then Clingan can back him up. But I think that they think long-term that Clingan would be the better option because, one, he's cheaper, and Aiden's making 35, and if he crushes it, he's going to command 40, 45, right?
Right.
And you can't pay everybody because eventually you got to pay Scoot, you got to pay Sharp, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to see the offensive production from him. If I see that, then I'll believe he's a viable starting center moving forward.
Absolutely, and one of the key guys that's also been here as well has been that of Anthony Simons. Just wanted to know from you the future on Anthony Simons and the Portland Trailblazers. Does he want to stay in Portland long term? Do you see Portland possibly moving him at some point? What is the morale on Anthony Simons?
Yeah, that's something to watch. So when they traded C.J. McCollum a couple of years ago, part of the reason was, well, one, they were redundant at that court, but they were going to continue being redundant, but at least be redundant with a younger guard in Anthony because they believed his talent level was, potential all-star level. So, but, that next season, Dame gets hurt. Dame gets hurt early. Then Anthony gets hurt, and then Dame's gone, and then they draft Scoot. So they draft a point guard, a lead guard, and they call him generational and transcendent, and they clearly coveted him and believed he could be a future star. And so then what does that mean for Anthony? I, for one, am not going to take this franchise seriously until they stop starting two small guards.
Okay.
Like, stop.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Only one franchise in at least 50 years. I went back 50 years. I've been saying this for 10 years, and other people have said it too. Has won an NBA championship with their best players being two small guards, and that was the Detroit Pistons. Who Isaiah Thomas and Dumars were backed by the greatest defensive front court ever. So it's extremely obviously difficult to pull that off because size does matter in the NBA. So Scoot Anthony for me doesn't work. Anthony Sharp works. Maybe Scoot and Sharp works. So what does that mean? That means Anthony's got to go. He's going to be the one to go because they're committed to building around Scoot and Sharp. And that's fine, but then do something with Anthony because Anthony has 2 years left on his deal. If he plays well, he's going to command 30+. You're not going to pay him 30+ and pay everyone else 30+ and keep the two young guards. So my thing this year is free Anthony Simons. Let him move him somewhere where he can be the lead guard, where he's not messing around, with two young kids who are the future in the backcourt, allegedly. So I believe that by next summer he's moved.
Okay. Aaron Fentress, our guest. He's of the Oregonian. You can also follow him on X at Aaron J. Fentress. Coach Chauncey Billups, I think he thought that he was coming there to coach Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard ends up going, to the Milwaukee Bucks, and so now he's had to be the leader of a fairly young team. What have you thought of the job of Coach Billups and what he's been able to do with this young squad?
Oh, man, that's a crazy situation. I feel badly for Chauncey because, yes, he came there, coaching Dame, a point guard. He was a point guard.
Right.
And they were going to continue to build around Damian. And so at the very least, you're good.
Right.
They made the playoffs 8 straight years with Damian. So at the very least, you're good. And then, Dame had the ab issue, the groin issue, and they fired the GM. And then the new GM comes in. They decide to trade CJ. And they've been basically in tank mode ever since, and he's racking up losses at an alarming rate.
Right.
But to me, it's impossible. I don't know how anyone can truly judge him as a coach, good or bad. When he had a legit roster in place, he had a record over 500. Like they were over 500 before Dame's abs started acting up, and then CJ had a collapsed lung. They were over 500 before they lost two of their best defensive players. This was 2 years ago, and the defense fell to pieces. And then Dame missed some time, then Ant missed some time, then Grant missed some time. Right. And then last year they came in knowing they were going to lose, and this year they're going in and knowing they're going to lose. So it's just difficult to judge him as a coach while he's racking up losses, and he's got one guaranteed year left on his deal, and then a team option year. So he's kind of coming in lame duck right now, which I don't think is very fair. But so, for me, I see some signs of positivity there. I would like to see what he would do with a legit NBA roster, which he really hasn't had very much time with a roster like that. And a star. You got to have a star, and this team doesn't have one. So yeah, it's really difficult. I feel bad for him because this is the type of run that could torpedo your career. Because then not everyone's going to be as nuanced when they judge your record.
Right.
And it's pretty bad.
Absolutely. One of the guys he is coaching that I am a huge fan of, however, and you've brought him up a couple of times, is Shaedon Sharpe. In terms of his development, what are the next steps for him, in your opinion?
He's got to stay healthy because last year he hit a run, man, where he was killing it.
Oh, man.
And he had the same abdominal thing that Dame experienced, and that slowed him down until he eventually had surgery. Once he had surgery, he was still talking about coming back, but yeah, there was no way they were going to bring him back. But to me, he by far is the best candidate to become a legitimate all-star. And you start there.
Yes.
So until I keep saying this, people, until I see an all-star, it doesn't matter what they do. I don't care how many draft picks. I don't care how many trades they make. You don't have at least one all-star caliber player on your team, you're not relevant. So to me, he's the guy who developed into being at that level because there's nothing he can't do. Like legitimately nothing he cannot do from a physical standpoint. He's so physically gifted, and basketball just looks easy to him. He didn't play it all in college, and last year, at the end of his rookie year, when Dame was benched and Anthony was out, he flourished. And then last year, he came off the bench early as a start only because they had to start Scoot because of everything they did in and around Scoot. But then Simons got hurt, so Sharp started. But Sharp and Ant together played really well together.
Yes.
So I see him. But here's the problem, though. Like Anthony's still your best guard. Right. You have to start Anthony. So are you going to start Anthony and Scoot, and then Sharp's coming off the bench? His ego is to the point, or still at the point where he's cool with that as long as he's getting minutes. And between the three of them, there's 96 minutes to divide, right?
Right.
So they can each get over 30. Right. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. But ultimately, you want him coming, taking off his sweats with the first team unit and going out there, and that means moving Anthony. But regardless of his role, if he can stay healthy, I think we'll see the full blossoming of Shaedon Sharp becoming a force. Still young, though, right? Still super young.
Yeah,
he only played 30-something games last year. And in the previous year, he only started a handful, and he didn't play in college, right? So he's still super young, but the talent is definitely there.
Aaron Fentress of the Oregonian. You can follow him on X at Aaron J. Fentress. Final couple of moments with him. You talk about the offseason, and it was a very quiet one for the Portland Trailblazers, although there have been a couple of names. Jeremy Grant, seemed like his name was in trade rumors. The Los Angeles Lakers possibly looking to make a move for him. You also have the Time Lord, Robert Williams, probably having his name in some trade talks because the Portland Trailblazers are pretty deep at the center position, at that big man position down there in Portland. Do you see them making any moves this season or standing pat and waiting until next summer? What are the plans for Portland in terms of maneuvering guys on this roster?
Yeah, I think their plan is to always be actively looking to make any type of deal that's going to improve the roster or improve their draft assets. Like I said, I don't think Anthony fits into the future because if he does, then you have to. That means you're shifting gears on Scoot or Shaedon. Jeremy Grant definitely does not fit in the future. He's making $30+ million. He's got 4 years left on that deal. And he's 30, so he hasn't set the timeline of your two 21-year-olds, and then now Klingon's 22 or what have you. Right. So he's got to get moved. Robert Williams, you just drafted the center.
Right.
And you have Aiden still. Robert Williams now is going to be the third center. And he's not going to enter camp fully healthy. I think he's going to need more time. Right. So yeah, pretty much everyone on the roster is a trade target, except for probably Scoot and Sharp. But yeah, I mean, even Klingon could be had in the right deal. So yes, it's just a matter of the deal being there. Like that's the thing.
Right.
I've been told that the goal is to trade either either Anthony or Grant as soon as possible, at least one of them. Okay. But again, the deal has to be there. There's no rush because we're both under contract for multiple years, right? So it could be before camp, it could be trade deadline, it could be next summer. Okay. But I fully expect there to be a lot of activity because they're still in the very early stages of building this thing, and most of the guys on the roster are not going to still be there by the time they hit the playoffs again. I don't believe.
Just final couple of moments with you, and thank you again for coming on the program with us. Sure. Is there somebody that you have a spotlight on this team? I know we've talked about Scoot, we've talked about Simons, we've talked about Sharp, but is there somebody who we're not talking about to where you're saying, you know what, I'm going to keep an eye on him this season. I want to see what he does as a Blazer.
I mean, we kind of covered most of the big names.
Right.
I guess there's a young group of forwards that they have stashed away, right? Jabari Walker, Chris Murray, Ryan Repair, Justin Minaya. Am I forgetting one? Anyway, it's a young group of forwards that they brought these guys in and hoping they develop. And right now, I'm not buying that group. Oh, Tamaya Kamara, who they relied on defensively. But here's the crazy thing about that entire group. So we got 5 young forwards. None of them can shoot. Usually you have a guy who that's what he does. Right? He's the marksman. He comes off the bench and he stick him in the corner or put him wherever, and he just will drain threes on you. Not one of these guys does that, which is extremely interesting to me that you put together this group of guys and none of them are reliable shooters. Chris Murray was the first pick. They really talked him up. He had a horrible summer league. Very disappointed. He should have carved up summer league after playing a year in the NBA and G League. He did not, but he's a guy that they drafted in the first round. They talked him up. They called him a lottery talent. So he needs to make a huge leap this summer to really give them at least another asset, whether it's to include in trades or it's legitimate depth off the bench down the line. But yeah, he's someone who I think has a lot to prove this season.
Final one for you, Mr. Fentress. Greg Oden was on a podcast not too long ago. I think it was with Udonis Haslem and Mike Miller, and talked about if he, Brandon Roy, and LaMarcus Aldridge were all healthy, he would have loved to have seen what that team would have done in the playoffs and beyond. Just wanted to get your opinion on that, and whether or not you agree. And then also, just talk about the talent that Brandon Roy was. I really feel like guys in this generation just forget how talented Brandon Roy was and what he could have been if he were to have stayed healthy.
Yeah, that's a huge point of pain for Blazers fans. Think about this: they win the championship in the '70s. Then Walton can't stay healthy, right?
Right.
They pass on Jordan. Right. They lose the coin flip for Olajuwon, pass on Jordan, end up with Bowie, who gets hurt.
Right.
And then later you got the whole situation with Oden and Durant, and then you have Roy and you have Aldridge, and then Roy gets banged up. And then we got Aldridge, we draft Dame, and then Aldridge leaves.
Right.
It's just, and then the whole thing happens with Dame wanting out because they wouldn't build around him properly. So it's been decades of misery from a roster standpoint for the fan base here, and that whole situation is a huge what if. Now, Oden did not come out like gangbusters at all. He struggled, and he had some days. I don't know if he was going to develop offensively, but at the very least, he's snatching every rebound, he's swatting shots and altering shots, right? And then you got the plenty of scoring from Roy and Aldridge. So that definitely is a huge what if for the Blazers franchise. Do they win a title? I don't know. There's a lot of super teams running around, but they could have developed into being close to a super team. The thing about Roy that I loved when I went to watch him play, what it drives me nuts when guys make ridiculously just dumb plays, like just not smart basketball, jacking up bad shots, making bad passes, just making bad decisions. Brandon Roy rarely ever did that.
Oh man!
Like when I watched him play, especially live, I just felt like I was watching a guy who was thinking the game and always getting to his spot, rarely took bad shots, always willing to give up the ball, knowing that it could come back to him. If he gave it up, he trusted his teammates to make a play, or it's going to come back to him in a better situation that he can make a play. So he was, I don't want to say artist out there because, he's not on the level of like a Magic Johnson who was a true artist, but he was just such a fun, smart, high IQ intellectual player to watch, and it's a shame what happened to his body. It's a shame that he lost 6 or 7 prime years. That would have definitely elevated this franchise further.
Absolutely. He is Aaron Fentress of the Oregonian. You can follow him on X at Aaron J. Fentress. Also has a great podcast on the Blazers called the Blazer Focused Podcast. Make sure to give that a follow as well, and also follow him on X. We're definitely going to have him back on again once we get deeper and deeper into the regular season. Really enjoyed his insight. So, Mr. Fentress, enjoy the rest of your day. I know the NBA season there in Portland isn't going to be one with championship expectations, but here's to a good season for the Portland Trailblazers, man, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
All right, man. Take care.
Thank you. Our next guest said on Twitter on Wednesday, I am so excited to talk about hoop this season. I'm sure there will be some other BS y'all want to discuss, but we're prioritizing real hoop, damn it. That is all I have to say. It excited me so much to understand that we are having this guy on the program. He is Lawrence Murray. He is with the Athletic NBA. Please make sure to follow this guy on Twitter at Law Murray VNU, and we're so gracious to have him on the program. Cannot wait to pick his brain in all things hoop. Lawrence, thanks for coming on my little show, man. How are you?
I feel good, man. Hope everything is well with you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. Just want to go back to my hometown. We talked about the Los Angeles Lakers last week. We'll talk about the Clippers here this week. And the first question I wanted to ask, though, I understand that the Staples Center or Crypto.com arena has been a staple in the Los Angeles area, but from what I've seen in terms of pictures and video and all that good stuff, even a video that you had posted on your Twitter not too long ago, this Intuit Dome is massive, and it seems like it's state of the art. Have you been able to go there yet?
I've been able to be there. Got a chance to hoop there. I got a chance to see this place from the ground up, basically.
Right.
I was at the groundbreaking 3 Septembers ago.
Wow.
And to think that it's finally here, it feels like I'm covering a completely different organization.
Wow.
At the same time, the games haven't started yet.
Right.
And this place, I know that the concerts have been cool. I haven't been to any of them. And so that's going to be down the line, I guess. But
Right.
we can't really. I'm not going to judge the full scope of the building until I get through a game there, and
Right.
that'll come in October. So very much looking forward to next month and to seeing how games will be different there than any other arena in the league. And I can tell you that'll definitely be the case. But to be honest with you, there's still one big piece left, and that is to see the team that will be representing that building to open it next month, and we'll get there.
Absolutely. And one of the things when it comes to the team opening up that new arena, I'm sure one of the pieces that they would have loved helping facilitate that opening would be that of Paul George. But I didn't see it coming, to be completely honest with you, him leaving Los Angeles. I thought the energy was there. He wanted to be back in the LA area. You brought in James Harden. Kawhi Leonard, when he was a free agent, said, I want Paul George to be the number 2 guy alongside me on this team. Now he's gone. I just wanted to know from you and the things in which you probably heard and what was discussed around NBA circles, did the Clippers see that coming? Did they think he was actually going to leave?
I think they were prepared for the possibility.
Okay.
And when that possibility became reality, I felt like the Clippers were ready to react. The Clippers had a hard plan as to what they were going to do if Paul George didn't accept their final offers. And we saw it. He didn't get traded to Golden State.
Right.
And when Paul opted out, and why did Paul George opt out? Because he had money from a good team.
Right.
That doesn't always happen.
Right.
James Harden, you saw last year, he would have wanted to opt out and go to Houston if Houston was willing to pay him. And Houston didn't hire the head coach that was going to sign off on a move like that. So James wound up opting in and not getting to his preferred destination until after the regular season had started, which affected multiple franchises. Paul, he was a lot more fortunate than that. Philadelphia was ready to throw him the entire bag, and that was that.
Right.
The Clippers, they were ready. They signed Derrick Jones Jr. They brought back Nikola Batum. They knew that Chris Dunn was going to be Russell Westbrook's replacement.
Okay.
So the Clippers knew exactly what kind of team that they wanted if Paul wasn't going to come back. That's not to say that the Clippers are better. That's not to say that the Clippers aren't going to miss Paul. But I do think that the Clippers, they weren't left holding the bag. They knew what they wanted to do. They executed it. And more importantly, and this is something that a lot of people are just not going to grasp for the foreseeable, well, at least going into the season, I could already tell, they have a long-term plan.
Okay.
And that long-term plan, Into a Dome is a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Certain salary spots are a part of it. Mm-hmm. And that is something that we can't really judge them on until these seasons progress. This one, as well as the next 1 or 2 seasons afterwards.
Absolutely. Talking LA Clippers basketball with Lawrence Murray of The Athletic. You can follow him on X at Law Murray, the NU. So the James Harden experiment, what did you think about it year one? And now is going to be heading into year two. He's now the number 2 guy alongside Kawhi Leonard. But what were your thoughts on it last year?
I just feel like James came to the Clippers and needed to adjust, and that cost the Clippers games. But once James was playing the way that he needed to play, the Clippers looked like the best, at least the best offense in basketball.
Right.
It's just overwhelming levels of talent, shot making, and organization. Now, the concern with James is that he did peak a little early. I thought that come February, it became clear that he was starting to run out of gas.
Right.
And part of that was just the Clippers had to play amazing level of basketball to recover from starting 3-7, from losing the first 5 games that James Harden played with the team, and putting them in that hole to begin with. And so the thing with James is his influence on everybody will increase with Paul not being there,
Okay.
and with Russell Westbrook not being there. He's the point guard. He's the primary playmaker. He's the ultimate play starter. And James Harden has a really good regular season track record as far as offense goes and as far as winning games goes. And that's all we can really talk about. So the experiment kind of, if you want to look at conclusions from that experiment, we know that Tyronn Lue trusts James Harden,
Right.
that he's going to lean fully into him, that he's also, Tyronn Lue's not going to look at James Harden as anything other than what James Harden is, and that is a primary playmaker, an on-ball force, and a guy that you're not going to spend a bunch of time having him off the ball trying to adapt that way. I think they realize that pretty quick. And so it'll be very interesting to see Tyronn Lue lean even more into James next year based off of what we saw from last year.
How much pressure is on Kawhi Leonard to deliver the goods this year, in your opinion?
I mean, he's always been asked to deliver the goods, and so I don't think Kawhi is one of those guys that looks at pressure and folds. Like, Kawhi is going to do what he does every year, and that's show up and try and be the healthiest that he can be,
Right.
to be prepared to elevate the level of play of his teammates, which he does that more with his play than with anything else, and hopefully his body holds up. It held up pretty well until it didn't last year. He played more games than he played in any year since he left San Antonio. He played more minutes per game than he did in any year of his career, including his younger days in San Antonio. And so I don't think Kawhi is the type of player or the type of person that's going to talk too much about things that he can't control. I think he's just going to try and make the most of the time that he does have. And for the Clippers, hopefully that's a reasonable amount of games. If he plays a reasonable amount of games, then the Clippers are going to be in a good place. And if he doesn't, then they're not. I think that's. I mean, it's pretty simple. So I think that Kawhi is just going to show up, and if the version of Kawhi that you got last year, as far as his ability on the court, if that player shows up, I think everyone's going to be in a better place than what they're projected to be, probably.
Have fans or even the organization, have they been disappointed with Kawhi at all? I mean, meaning this, he comes from San Antonio, and he's the NBA Finals MVP. Did a great job defending LeBron in that Finals in which he was in San Antonio. Has this Cinderella-esque story in Toronto, where he's able to defeat the Golden State Warriors, albeit injury-riddled. I understand that, but ends up winning the Finals MVP there. He elects to not go to the Lakers, but does come home to the LA area and decides to become a Clipper. And I'm sure that there were probably Clipper fans out there, or maybe even the organization, that felt that this guy's going to be able to deliver us a championship in some short time during his tenure here as a Los Angeles Clipper. I understand he's been injured. I understand you've put pieces around him, but I do understand that the Clippers probably looked at this guy as the franchise guy, and still do. Has there been any disappointment there, or have they been pleased with what they've seen out of the Kawhi thus far?
He just signed an extension in January. So the short answer is no.
Right.
They're not. I mean, it's the era is disappointing, and Kawhi, the pivotal point of what happened was the torn ACL.
Right.
Like that knee injury has it canceled an error.
Right.
Like just to be blunt.
Right.
But Kawhi's done. Kawhi's been the guy that he's supposed to be, outside of the fact that he just hasn't been able to play in the playoffs, and that's disappointing. But he's going to be the face of this building opening up,
Right.
and that was a priority for the organization. I know some people, fans, probably would have wanted Paul George to be that guy, and just to be blunt, uh, I don't think Paul just wasn't on that level to be that player. You know,
Okay.
I don't want to say, oh, you got to pick one or the other.
Right.
The plan was never to have to pick one or the other.
Right.
But even Paul will tell you that Kawhi was the main guy, and that Paul was trying to always to support Kawhi as that main guy. So I don't think this is too complicated.
Absolutely.
Like Kawhi is the guy, and it's unfortunate that his career was sidetracked by the torn ACL and all the knee issues that he's had since, and obviously all the injuries that he had going into the torn ACL.
Right.
You know, the quadriceps tendinopathy that ended his San Antonio tenure, that had to be managed aggressively while he was in Toronto. That was still a factor when he got to the LA Clippers.
Right.
But when that dude plays, he plays at a high level. And everything else, pretty much, it sucks to get injured, and that's what they've been dealing with. And I don't think there's been other issues, obviously, besides injury with the LA Clippers.
Right.
But, like, let's just be real. Like, when it comes to Kawhi Leonard, that dude is one of the best players in basketball when he's right physically.
Absolutely. Continuing our conversation with Lawrence Murray. You can follow him on X at LawMurrayTheNU. He is with The Athletic, talking with us about the LA Clippers and their upcoming season. Besides James Harden, besides Kawhi Leonard, is there a guy that you're keeping your eye on this team that you think needs to have a big year in terms of the Clippers' success this season?
Terrence Mann. If Terrence Mann doesn't have a career year on both ends of the floor, but especially offensively, then the Clippers are going to disappoint. And the thing is, I think Terrence is capable offensively of having a year where he's not just efficient. I feel like he's efficient every year, but he needs to add volume to go along with that efficiency. For a lot of guys, we look at it the other way around. They put up the big numbers, but they don't do it in a way that actually helps the team. And Terrence has always been a part of competent offenses with the LA Clippers. I mean, last year he started, but the ball wasn't in his hands at all because he was sharing the floor with 4 future Hall of Famers. You know, he was the last option. He was in a defensive role that was appropriate for the guys that he was sharing the floor with, but not at all where he was best suited to play. So I think what's really important is Derrick Jones Jr. is going to help the Clippers on the defensive end. And Derrick Jones Jr. is not going to be a guy who's going to demand a lot of touches on the offensive end. Right. Terrence needs to play up to that role offensively where he's running more pick and rolls, and he's just here to do more playmaking for others and getting more shots for himself. He needs to shoot the ball at a high level to begin the year, not just come in the middle of the season and have improvement. You always want to improve, but you want to start from a good place. Last year, that wasn't the case. It has to be the case this year. He has to shoot well to begin the year. He has to be a guy who can make plays for others. He's got to be a guy that relieves James Harden as far as ball handling is concerned. And he's got to score more. And I think he can do that at a high level. He's a guy who's playing for a contract. The Clippers are interested, but they can't be so interested that they have to see how Terrence adapts to increased responsibility. I think he's capable, but if he's to me the biggest X factor, the biggest swing guy on the Clippers as far as whether they can surprise or not.
Absolutely. Final moments with Lawrence Murray talking LA Clippers basketball with us on Open Gym. This is a team that won over 50 games last season, a top 5 team in the Western Conference, but you're going to go into this year where the Western Conference is a lot more loaded. Teams like Phoenix having a year under them, I think that's going to help them a lot. Memphis, I feel, is going to be a slept-on team. I understand that we don't know what Ja Morant's going to be coming into this season, but if he's anything like the old Ja Morant that we are used to, I think that Memphis team is going to be a force to be reckoned with. Dallas is fresh off of an NBA Finals. OKC was last year's number 1 seed. How do you feel like the Clippers are going to fare in this Western Conference this season?
They're a bubble team. They're right there in the middle as a likely play-in tournament team. But I can't drop them too low. I think people have them outside the play-in tournament in the bottom 5 of the West. And I just feel like that's not paying attention to the track records of the players and the coaching staff and the organization that the Clippers have, and that they've been having for several years. So I know the West is the West, but unless there's just the feeling that people think that something bad is going to happen to the Clippers that won't happen to these other teams in the West. And so, people aren't keeping the same energy, and I can understand that. People like to talk about a whole lot of other BS, as I've mentioned earlier, that you saw earlier. So I just feel like they're not as talented as they were in last year, but this is a coaching staff that is used to having 2 stars.
Right.
Well, they got 2 guys that they're playing through. And if those guys play a reasonable amount of games, and I expect both of those guys to miss 15 to 20 games each, but if those guys play a reasonable amount of games, and if they defend better than they have the last couple of years, and I think they know they will defend better because they have to, they don't have the talent margin to fall back on. Work habits and urgency and awareness have to be heightened if they're going to win games. And I think they have put a roster together and a coaching staff together, and they still have guys that are really good, that know how to play the game of basketball, that know how to get through regular seasons. I just feel like they're going to be right there in the mix in the Western Conference. And I don't have high expectations for them if they get to the playoffs, but I do think they get there.
Absolutely. He is Lawrence Murray. You can follow him on Twitter at LawMurrayVNU. He is with The Athletic. Make sure to read everything that he is putting out this season. It's going to be an exciting season for both he and the Los Angeles Clippers, and we hope to get more insight from him on the Clippers and the NBA at large throughout the regular season when he is gracious enough to give us his time. So, Mr. Murray, thanks again for coming on my show, man, and we'll definitely do this again soon.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Back here again on 1010XL and 92.5 FM. It is the Open Gym. So glad you guys are here with us. Appreciate both of our guests giving us insight on both the Portland Trailblazers and the Los Angeles Clippers. Hopefully we will have both of those individuals on later on during the regular season when we get deeper into the regular season and back on the radio side of things here on the Superstation. Before we get out of here, just have one more thing that I wanted to get into with you guys. The ESPN group. Oh, what the? I can't even talk. What the fuck? Can't even talk. All right. Which players from the 2024 USA basketball team will carry their success into this upcoming NBA season? Okay. I'm sorry, John. I'm trash.
You're fine, my friend.
I'm AIDS. Okay. Back here again on 1010XL and 92.5 FM. It is the Open Gym. So glad you guys are here with us. Thank you to Aaron Fentress of the Oregonian. Yes, it's Oregonian. I said it right. Okay. Back here again. Back here again on 1010XL and 92.5 FM. It is the Open Gym. Glad you guys are here with us. Thank you to Lawrence Murray for giving us insight on the Los Angeles Clippers and their outlook on the regular season, as well as Aaron Fentress of the Oregonian talking to us all things Portland Trail Blazers. Definitely going to be interesting to see what these two teams are able to accomplish come this season. Again, we're less than 21 days away from tip-off here in the National Basketball Association. Before we get out of here, the ESPN guys, NBA Today, the group with Richard Jefferson along with Tim Legler, talking about the Team USA and what they were able to accomplish, winning yet another gold medal. But one of the big questions is going to be, which one of those guys from Team USA that won the gold medal, who's going to be able to transition that into a big year in the NBA? And look, we had a lot of guys on that team, a lot of all-stars, a lot of future Hall of Famers. And the first guy that came to mind for me is definitely going to be one guy that maybe you could say got a little bit of unfair criticism, and that's going to be Jason Tatum. Look, I understand that he wants to be Kobe. He idolizes that guy. He wanted to show a Kobe-like game for Team USA. That wasn't able to happen. Reasons as to why, we don't know. But you also hear Jaylen Brown, a guy that says that he feels that he was snubbed and unfairly snubbed by Team USA, and he should have been a part of that group that won the gold medal in France. I do believe a guy like Jason Tatum is going to take this, and he is going to have to show that he's one of the more dominant players in the NBA. I understand that maybe he says, look, I'm not here to try to be the number one player in the league. Maybe a guy that's saying, I'm not looking to win MVP. I'm not looking to win NBA Finals MVP. I'm here to win championships. But maybe the tide turns because of what happened. He said, I finally know how it feels when I'm playing all the minutes in Boston and you see other guys who work hard in practice, work hard at their craft, and they're not playing as many minutes as I am. I was able to get that experience with Team USA. Well, now he's going to be able to go back to Boston where he's playing all of those minutes. And if he, as well as Jaylen Brown, are both angry at the fact of how their experience was or wasn't in Jaylen Brown's case with Team USA, could that spell trouble? And I think Jason Tatum is going to have a point to prove. Listen, the Boston Celtics are without question the best team in the NBA. You also have arguably the best core four in the NBA with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, who was also a part of Team USA, and Kristaps Porzingis. Those are going to be four guys that I don't know if anyone in the league is going to be able to match up with and defeat 4 times out of 7. I hate saying that as a Lakers fan, but until somebody dethrones them, this is going to be the team, at least for the next 1, maybe even 2 years, that's going to be an absolute wrecking ball when it comes to defending their NBA championship, or should I say, attack being the NBA champions and winning another NBA championship. Joe Mazzulla saying that they are going to be more in attack mode than they are defending mode. Now, Tim Legler did make an interesting point. He does believe that Kevin Durant is going to be able to take what he was able to do during the Olympics and be able to showcase this for the Phoenix Suns in the NBA season. Look, Phoenix gave up a lot to acquire the talent of Kevin Durant. You also have Devin Booker there, who also played on Team USA. You also have Bradley Beal. I think this team has a year under their belt. They may be able to figure something out. Bradley Beal was in and out for a majority of the year, but Kevin Durant is going to have to prove, at least in my opinion, that he can be a leader on an NBA championship squad. It is a loaded group. It's very top heavy. You get a point guard in Tyus Jones, a guy that I felt maybe many teams would have been interested in his services, but arguably he's gone to one of the better teams in the NBA and in the Western Conference in the Phoenix Suns. Kevin Durant, a lot on his shoulders this year. He knows how to play basketball. I do have to give him that. He understands how to play in terms of being more of just a wing guy, being more of a catch and shoot guy, that Carmelo Anthony type role when he's with Team USA, but an absolute bucket getter when it comes to playing in the NBA and playing in the regular season. Certainly going to be interesting. It was an interesting take by Tim Legler, thinking that Kevin Durant is going to be the guy that's going to be able to showcase his abilities the best following that Team USA win. Another guy that I have on my radar is definitely going to be Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards was a guy as well where he thought, you heard him, thought he was going to be the number one option for Team USA. Even if the game was in its final moments, he was going to be the guy that was going to bail Team USA out of a lot. Well, that didn't happen. That seemed to be more in the hands of Steph Curry, but this was a guy that, Steve Kerr was looking to say, listen, I want you to guard the other team's best player. I want you to guard the other team's best point guard. And I know that he did that and with a bevy of guys. Sometimes it would be Derek White, other times it would be Drew Holiday, other times it would be Anthony Edwards. But I do believe that Anthony Edwards now is going to have the confidence to be able to guard the other team's best player, whether that be LeBron James, whether that be Kevin Durant, whomever it is. I do believe he already has that dog in him if you check his x-rays, but I do believe that Anthony Edwards is going to be able to showcase his two-way ability. We understand how great he is as a scorer. We understand how great he is as a leaper, and we've seen the defensive capabilities in which he has, but I think Steve Kerr asking him to be one of those better defenders for Team USA and not looking solely to be a scorer for the team, I think is going to pay dividends for him, and we're going to see that for a Minnesota Timberwolves team who, like the OKC Thunder, feel like their time is now, feel like they can go on and get to the NBA Finals, maybe even win an NBA championship, and he's the guy that's going to have to spearhead that ship along with Karl Anthony Towns. You also have Rudy Gobert there, but both of them are going to concede to the fact that Anthony Edwards is without question their best player, and he's going to have to be the guy that is going to get them there. The Timberwolves are only going to go as far as Anthony Edwards takes them. Finally, Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid, we talked about earlier in the program. This has to be his year. This has been an interesting saga, an interesting era for the Philadelphia 76ers when it comes to Joel Embiid. I understand that there have been plenty of things, plenty of asterisks you can put by each and every year of Joel Embiid's career, from Ben Simmons to his own personal injuries to the James Harden debacle, to also to Coach Doc Rivers and it not working out there. You now have Tyrese Maxey, who's a great young guard. You also have Paul George, who you acquired this summer, and you're going to probably be looking for him to be that guy, to be the better wing scorer. He's able to do a lot more than Tobias Harris. They chose Paul George over Tobias Harris this time around. Jimmy Butler, you can still hear Jimmy Butler in the tunnel to this day in Philadelphia saying they chose Tobias Harris over me. Well, this time they chose Paul George over Tobias Harris. That's going to be a group that is going to be absolutely deadly within the Eastern Conference, and they're my pick to potentially dethrone the Boston Celtics in their quest of winning yet another NBA championship and going back-to-back. But it's all going to ride on the shoulders of Joel Embiid, and if he can do that, I do believe that the Philadelphia 76ers can win an NBA championship once again. The most dominant player that we could see from the Olympics overall, of course, is going to be Victor Wembanyama. Victor Wembanyama, by the time we get to 2028, he may be the best player in the league, don't you think? I mean, this is a 7'4" guy that can absolutely do it all. And look, France almost beat Team USA in the Olympics. It wasn't like it was a blowout game for Team USA. Steph Curry had his late game heroics, but if we really want to be honest, I mean, Team France has a good squad there and good young talent, and Victor Wembanyama is absolutely the darling of that country when it comes to basketball. This is going to be a guy, year 2, that I feel is going to have a better season, especially having a guy such as Chris Paul on his team that's probably going to teach him where he needs to be on the floor, how he's going to be able to get easier shots. He's going to get lobs like crazy from Chris Paul. The pick and roll game between he and CP3 is absolutely going to be unfair. And I can understand why Chris Paul said, well, if I'm not going to win an NBA championship, let me play with one of the best young players around and get the NBA assist record for the duration of my NBA career. Victor Wembanyama is going to probably turn out to be the most dominant player that we saw in the Olympics by the time we get to the next Olympics, and probably later on down the line, the next 5, 6, 7 years, he'll be the most dominant player in the NBA. But if you were to ask me right now which player from Team USA is going to be the guy to showcase his talent the best coming next season, is going to be Jason Tatum. If you want to prove that you're like a Kobe Bryant style like player, which he's not, but if that's what you're looking to prove, if you're also looking to prove to be one of the best guys in the NBA, and again, he's probably not, but if you are looking to do that, Jason Tatum, it's going to have to be this season. Stamp it with a back-to-back. You're already the champion, but can you do it again? That's what separates good players from great players. And I think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown understand the gravity in which comes into this NBA season, and I think they're going to attack it with such a veracity that they may just win yet another NBA championship. And as a Lakers fan, makes me absolutely sick. That's going to do it for us. I'm RJ Saunders. John O'Leary's been making it all happen behind the microphone as well as behind the camera. This has been another edition of Open Gym. We hope to see you again next week. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We have a lot more going for you here on 1010XL and 92.5 FM. We'll continue doing our deep dives across the NBA right here on Open Gym.